Thank you very much. Once again, do you have the slides? I only have about 100 slides this time, so you should be happy. While we're getting that, I was listening and watching the previous presentation. This is something that we're interested in trying to implement in Alberta. We're just starting, so it's good to see that others can take the effort to learn some of these things and that we can take some advice back from that. I suspect that a lot of the learnings and a lot of the challenges will be the same. I'm reminded of one particular challenge that once a patient is in your clinic, they don't necessarily want to go back to their family doctor. When patients say this to me, I ask them if their children want to go back to school in the morning, and they usually say no, they don't want to go to school, but they have to because it's what they need, and it's what's going to help them down the road. And it's very similar for our patients. They need to go back to their family doctor. Heart failure clinics are not primary care facilities. They are not for the other 4 to 5 conditions that these patients have, and so we do need to work together. Absolutely. All right. We have a Canadian Heart Failure Network. We're very happy to have it. We would be thrilled to collaborate with database learnings, regional practice patterns. People that are involved in the Heart Failure Network, as you can see, this is what characterizes the network. A lot of similarities you see already with those who have heart failure clinics in Quebec. There's a shared commitment to top quality care. There is collaboration between different specialties and professions. And we have a collective database that we can use to understand our care better. But there's also a lot of things that we're missing. People who don't have a formal affiliation with heart failure clinics, people whose heart failure is not the majority of their clinical load, and I'm talking mainly about cardiologists and internists, they're not in the network. And they contribute greatly to heart failure care in Canada. They have a great interest. Some of them do a lot of heart failure research, but because they don't actually have a heart failure clinic, they're not in the network. You have to be in a heart failure clinic to be in the network. We also don't have a national voice at our national cardiovascular meeting. And that makes it harder for us to communicate and for us to learn, to participate in the national discovery of healthcare in general. And you can see here that there's the focus is a little bit different than and there's opportunities for these people to get involved as well. So we propose a Canadian Heart Failure Society. I've been in discussions with the Canadian Cardiovascular Society. I've had discussions with many people in this room and many other rooms. I discussed it with our Heart Failure Network and with colleagues from across the country. And there is a lot of support and interest and buy-in for this. Now, a Heart Failure Society is not perfect. It has disadvantages too. But we think that with affiliation with the CCS, there can be a formal relationship, so that there are things that we're able to do, especially at the national meeting, that we cannot currently do. So it is the Canadian Heart Failure Society, it's the reason for existence is not to replace anything that currently exists, but as a supplement or a collaborative force. That is to say that in particular, the Heart Failure Network in Canada would continue as it normally does. But the Heart Failure Society would be designed to be a complementary body that would be able to achieve things that the network cannot. So if I were to visualize what happens in the future, I'm not so presumptuous as to suggest what would happen here in Quebec. I think it's important for Quebecers to determine what happens with the Quebec Heart Failure Society and with the Heart Failure networks. And I expect a lot of that would be essentially unchanged. That's what I would think. But there may be an opportunity for us to collaborate together so that on one hand, as you can see here, there are important differences. The Canadian Heart Failure Society, if it's to be affiliated with the CCS, has to have, and I believe the number is 50% Canadian Cardiovascular Society members. So it doesn't all have to be Canadian Cardiovascular Society members, but half of them have to be Canadian Cardiovascular Society members. Belonging to one of the national cardiovascular nursing organizations, we may be able to make that count as a CCS membership as well. You can see here that there's always an executive committee or a director committee or steering committee. There's always something like that because there needs to be strategy, there needs to be decision making, there needs to be planning, and you need a body like that. And it would be formed from the membership. It wouldn't be determined by outside organizations. The focus would be on professional collaboration, especially as it pertains to knowledge translation. So at our annual meeting, we would expect to have a special lecture, much the same as the Canadian Pediatric Cardiologist Society has, for example, etc. At least one workshop that would be translated, or possibly two workshops, one in English and one in French. These things are to be determined at a later time. There would be a pool of individuals nationally that could speak and be advocates for heart failure. We have advocates for mental health, for acute myocardial infarction, for several conditions, but there's not a large national advocacy voice for heart failure. We think that needs to change. It's a dominant player, it's a dominant condition in cardiovascular care. Why shouldn't it have its own voice? And it would also serve as a pool of talent for the Canadian Cardiovascular Society and other societies, and there's a group of 7 or 8 societies together that form the Canadian Cardiovascular meeting every year, SCIC Congress, and as well have an influence on the learning track, so we can decide what abstracts are accepted and rejected, and what kind of what philosophy underlies the creation of the meeting itself. So we think that there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of good reason for existence. I see no real disadvantages. I don't see any. I don't see this taking over or changing the role of anything else that currently exists. But we think that the potential here is great, and so that's why I was very pleased when Serge asked me to come and speak to you about this, to give you an idea of what we're thinking and to invite you for your interest in the future as well. So I think I'll stop right there. Those are my 400 slides, and if there's any questions or comments, then I'm happy to participate.
Thank you very much.